Well, here we are. No, 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 no. The more wood, the more food.
Hello, and welcome to episode 41 of the Laurel and Hardy podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Vasey, and on today's show, we come to late August, early September 1929, and the filming of Laurel and Hardy's classic short, The Hoose-Gow. Joining me shortly to discuss the film's production history will be returning guest, Laurel and Hardy historian, expert, author, and good friend of the show, Randy Skretvedt. So we'll be hopping over to California to join Randy very shortly. But before we dive in, I just wanted to draw your attention to the recent videos that Russell and I posted on our YouTube channel very recently, in which we provide a fairly detailed look at our Laurel and Hardy silence book. We've tried to give you a really good idea of what you can expect from the book, including a couple of full chapters for you to have a look at. Work is coming on a pace on the book as we begin to move into the final months of preparation. It's a really exciting time seeing things starting to come together as they are. Now, what I'd like to ask of you at this point is if you are interested in the book, and importantly, if you know anyone else who loves Laurel and Hardy and you think would be also interested in the book, please share the videos, the website links, and anything else. Word of mouth especially is always useful. Even maybe share the podcast episode that we recorded recently on the book, just to make sure that as many fans of the boys are aware of it as possible. Now, the reason I ask this is simply because, as you probably know by now, this is going to be a limited edition print run. So once the orders are in through Kickstarter on that when the campaign month is over, and it will only be for about a month, there will be no more orders possible of the book. It is a one-hit wonder. I know from speaking to people over the years that there are still huge Laurel and Hardy fans out there, members of Sons of the Desert Tents even, that still are not aware of this podcast, of the Facebook group, and one would imagine also of this book coming out on Laurel and Hardy's silent era. And I would just hate to think that there are fans out there that don't have the opportunity or won't have the opportunity to order one of these lovely publications simply because they weren't aware of it. So please share with your friends as much as possible. As I've said in the past, all you need to do at the moment is to add your name to our mailing list, which you can do through our website, laurelandhardyfilms.com, and we will keep you up to date through newsletters, emails, and of course this podcast, so we won't let you miss out. It's so important for us to capture as many people as possible who are interested in purchasing the book, as your support is crucial to ensuring that we're able to put everything into it that we'd hoped and make the publication that we have in our dreams. So thank you for your continued support with that. And whilst I'm giving out thanks, I must say a huge thanks to the people who've become brand new patrons of the podcast over the last month. And those people are Danny Sheppers, Jason Vaughan, Michael Sim, and William Taylor. So thank you so much, you guys, for showing your support to the podcast. It means so much to me, and I hope you enjoy the extra content, and that those of you who are signed up to the Plumtree tier will take advantage of the forthcoming invitation to our next Fraternally Yours meeting, which will be coming up very soon. I know our meeting is long overdue now, so I apologize for that, but invitations will be going out very, very shortly. Okay, I think that's all for now. So you stand watch. I'm off to the cook tent to get some rice. Today's film in focus is The Hoose-Gow. It was filmed Friday, August 30th through Tuesday, September 10th. It was produced by Hal Roach, directed by James Parrott, assistant director Lloyd French, photographed by George Stevens, Len Powers and Glenn Robert Kirshner. And the main supporting cast were Tiny Sanford, James Finlayson, Dick Sutherland, Leo Willis, Eleanor Vanderveer and Charlie Hall. As soon as They Go Boom was in the can, the Roach Studios closed down for their annual month-long vacation. This was certainly a well-earned break for the boys, who had already turned out 12 fantastic comedy shorts in the first 7 months of that year alone, not including their cameo appearance in the Hollywood Review of 1929. Professionally, life was good for the Laurel and Hardy team, but personally, particularly for Babe Hardy, things were far from good, as John McCabe relates in his biography, Babe, The Life of Oliver Hardy. Quote, "His self-esteem in the late 20s began to suffer because he increasingly felt his lack of education. One afternoon playing golf, a friend's friend in their foursome talked at length about a current national problem. Everyone except Babe offered a reasoned opinion on the matter, and his inability to do so severely embarrassed him. That incident was to remain an intellectual watershed in his life. It kept bringing sharply home to him something more than his inadequacy as a conversationalist on current affairs. He realized, or thought he realized, that he did not have a personal identity at all, certainly at least not one that satisfied him." End quote. In addition to Babe's growing personal identity crisis, his relationship with his wife Myrtle was also struggling at this time. Myrtle's alcoholism was becoming problematic, and the couple were beginning to drift apart. On the 25th of July 1929, just 2 days before the Roach studio closed for the summer holiday, Myrtle filed for divorce, claiming she'd received 7 years of cruel treatment. Again, John McCabe describes, quote, "Babe accepted the idea of divorce rather stoically. The idea of it, on reflection, both alarmed and comforted him. However, he still loved her. Despite the divorce application, they stayed together at their home on Fredonia Drive, Los Angeles, agreeing to separate when further judgment was made on her suit." End quote. Following this personally challenging summer, Stan and Babe reported for work at the end of August, and the Laurel and Hardy machine set straight to work on their next short subject, the Hoose-Gow. In contrast to their previous picture, They Go Boom, which was filmed entirely on a studio set, the Hoose-Gow was filmed completely on location, and in comparison, the feel of the pictures couldn't be more different. The boys are, as usual, brilliant in both scenarios. The opening scene of the Hoose-Gow shows that the boys have been arrested and are being delivered in the back of a paddy wagon to prison. The paddy wagon enters a gateway leading through to a large prison complex, which keen observers may also recognise as the same prison used in the boys' 1927 silent short, The Second 100 Years. The actual location used for both films was not a prison at all, but the Los Angeles County Hospital. Meeting them at the prison is the warden, played by Tiny Sanford. He instructs all the prisoners, of which there are many, to climb out of the vehicle. Now, amongst the group alighting before Stan and Ollie are fellow felons Charlie Hall and Leo Willis. Both men would reappear later in the film, with Charlie Hall playing 2 different roles.
Hey, come on, inside.
Come on, get out. Get in. Come on. Come on, get in.
Inside, boys. Come on.
Come on. Back it.
Come on inside, fellas. Come on. Come on, Leo.
I know you keep your...
Hey! What are you guys trying to do? Get away? Come on, get out of there.
Get your leg off.
Hurry up. Come on.
Officer, we didn't have anything to do with this. We were only watching the raid.
Is that so? Well, why didn't you tell it to the judge?
We did, but he wouldn't believe us.
Of course he wouldn't believe you.
You can't keep us in here. We've done nothing.
Oh, I can't,
I won't shush.
Well, I...
Shut up. Oh! God! Oh!
Now, you two get over there. I'll tend to you later. Go on! Get out of here!
Interestingly, the opening title cards, presumably written by story editor H.M. Walker, set the scene, reassuring fans that the boys are not really criminals. Quote, "Neither Mr. Laurel nor Mr. Hardy had any thoughts of doing wrong. As a matter of fact, they had no thoughts of any kind." End quote. There follows some nice business with Tiny Sanford, where Stan gets an apple stuck in his mouth. The apple, when thrown over the prison wall, would alert some waiting friends of Leo Willis's who had supplied the boys with an apple each. Willis, as well as working with Harold Lloyd and Charlie Chase, also had previously been in 3 films with Stan and Ollie before, namely Flying Elephants, 1927, the Max Davidson short Call of the Cuckoos, 1927, and Their Purple Moment from 1928. And he would also go on to appear in 4 more films with the boys: Below Zero, 1930, Pardon Us from 1931, The Live Ghost, 1934, and finally The Bohemian Girl in 1936. Shortly afterwards, the setting changes dramatically as the prisoners are sent for some hard labour as a pick-wielding road gang. There are some classic bits of Laurel and Hardy business throughout here, especially the recurring gag involving Stan's pick keeping on getting caught up in Ollie's jacket and tearing it slowly but surely to shreds. Randy Skretvedt, writing in The Magic Behind the Movies, records an interview he held with Babe's widow, Lucille, where she described how Babe's body was marked with scars following his many years of filmmaking with Stan, and in particular, she told of an accident during the road scene in the Hoose-Gow. Quote, "The comedy business of the scene called for Laurel to nick Hardy in the seat of his pants with his pick, a real pick being used as the rubber pick looked fakey in action. The nicking was to occur on Laurel's uplift of the pick, but unfortunately for Hardy, his huge bulk moved too close to Laurel's downward swing of the heavy pick, and he received a very real nicking in his flesh. Everyone on the set but Laurel and Hardy roared with laughter. Only they knew what had really happened." Also reporting this same story, an article in Picture Play magazine, December 1929, reported, quote, "The nicking was scheduled to be very light and affectionate, as behooves 2 brotherly comedians. Unfortunately, Hardy, facing in the opposite direction from Laurel, moved at the moment that the pick was swung, and it penetrated the aft part of his trousers. It is recorded that the yell which he emitted put the sound apparatus of the studio out of commission for an hour or 2, and hereafter he will insist on the use of rubber picks only." End quote. So more mayhem then ensues as the boys firstly sit at the warden's own personal dining table and proceed to consume his lunch, much to Sanford's displeasure.
I ought to make you eat that. Why don't you be careful? I beg your pardon?
Get away from my table! Get out of here, both of you! Go.
Then, in order to win favour with the prison camp chef and earn some food of their own, the boys go off to chop some wood.
Get me some wood and I'll fix you up.
How much do you want?
Well, listen, the more wood you get, the more you get to eat.
Thank you. Come, Stanley. Well, here we are. No, 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 no. The more wood, the more food. Oh, the tree. Correct. Now, come on.
Not knowing that atop the same tree is watchman Charlie Hall in his second role of the film in a lookout tower. When the trunk breaks, the tower does fall, and down comes the watchman, tower and all, flattening the mess tent in the process.
Save me! Oh, help!
The final few scenes build up to a tried and tested Laurel and Hardy staple finale, a food-flinging frenzy where everyone close by is dragged into the fray one by one. The prison governor, who else but James Finlayson, arrives in his chauffeur-driven car with two elegant-looking ladies in tow to inspect the prisoners and their facilities.
And how is everything, Sanford?
Everything is under control, Governor.
Very good. Right this way, please.
Right, certainly.
As Finlayson moves out of sight, Stan's pick gets once again entangled in Ollie's clothing, and Ollie throws the pick in frustration out of shot. It comes to rest in the governor's car radiator, causing water to gush out. Prisoner Leo Willis is once again near at hand with some pearls of wisdom for the boys.
Hey! I'll tell you how to stop that leak. Put some rice in the radiator. Get some from the cook tent.
You go get it now. Watch this. Now hurry up, too.
For reasons best known to them, Stan and Ollie think this is sound advice, and Stan rushes off to get the rice, while Ollie holds his hand over the leak. A few moments later, and the radiator is filled with rice, the leak stops, and the boys return to their workstation, secure in the knowledge that nobody will be any the wiser. Finlayson and his party finally return, climb into the car, and the engine springs to life. But it doesn't take long until the radiator is spouting gallons of sloppy rice, like some sort of rice pudding geyser. Finlayson's double take is hilarious, as you would expect. It all kicks off when Sanford boots Stan up his behind again, causing him to fall face first into the puddle of rice. And refusing to stand for this, Stan gets up and throws a handful of rice into Sanford's face. Sanford retaliates and throws a handful at Stan, who ducks, and Finlayson gets it in the face instead. And as usual, it goes on until everyone, including Finlayson's female companions, are covered in sloppy rice. Realising that they're going to be in big trouble and spotting an opportunity to escape, the boys exit stage right and hide in the back of an untouched and unaffected car belonging to the governor's entourage. However, when the boys are found to be missing, Sanford and Finlayson jump into the front seats and prepare to begin a search of the area, only to throw the car in reverse and crash straight into a truck carrying very delicately balanced barrels of whitewash. 2 barrels empty their contents all over the back of the car, and the last image we see is 2 ghost-like figures of Stan and Ollie rising from the back seats, literally covered from head to toe with white paint. And we fade to black. Once again, the boys couldn't seem to put a foot wrong with the critics. This review from Motion Picture Magazine from February 1931 being fairly typical. Quote, "Slapstick, pure and simple. But if you don't laugh yourself silly, you must have lockjaw. They are the 2 dumbest prisoners that ever walked into a cell together. The result is a continual succession of riotous episodes and the wrecking of both discipline and prison. An antidote for any prison picture and a satire on all of them." End quote. Our very special guest joining us today for our deep dive into Laurel and Hardy's 2-reeler, The Hoose-Gow, and the second of 2 back-to-back episodes, in fact, is our very good friend, Laurel and Hardy expert, and the author of several books on the boys. It is, of course, the wonderful Randy Skretvedt. So welcome back to the Laurel and Hardy podcast, Randy.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm always happy to be on the Laurel and Hardy podcast. Which should be your name. I should be. Your audience would probably get the joke.
But if they didn't, they think, what on earth is this? Yeah. Lovely. Well, Randy, it's great to have you back again. It's only a few weeks since we last spoke, but I'm always excited to talk to you, especially when you request to be on a particular episode, as there's obviously something about this film or its production history that you especially enjoy or find particularly interesting. So let's get straight into it. The Hoose-Gow, filmed. So the filming takes place at the end of August through September 10th. I've got written down September 10th.
Friday, August 30th through Tuesday, September 10th. However, that encompassed the Labor Day weekend here in the States. So they got Monday, September 2nd off, but they made up for it by shooting on a Sunday, September 8th. Normally, they never filmed on Sunday. But they had done that a year previous for Big Business because that took place over Christmas week.
Yes, of course.
So they didn't film on Christmas Day, but they did film on the following Sunday.
Yeah. Of course.
or the preceding Sunday, one of those Sundays anyway.
Now, that must be quite, if you're shooting on location, that must be quite tricky to have to pack up and then go back out again.
Well, that's, as I mentioned during They Go Boom, that's a very inexpensive film because that's on two very plain sets.
Yeah.
The bedroom set and the kitchen set.
Yeah.
And that's all there is. And it's all interior. There's mainly just Laurel and Hardy and Charlie Hall, and very small cast. The main prop is the big mattress,
Yeah.
which can't have been all that expensive to create. And I think what happened is they knew what their budget was for the year at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And they said, well, let's save a little bit of money on one film so we have more to spend on another one. I wonder if they had come up with the story for the Hoose-Gow before They Go Boom. I don't know. But anyway, the production numbers are consecutive. But in any event, they may have had this idea and said, well, that's going to take a fair amount of money, so let's make a cheapy one beforehand.
Yeah.
Because it's not only shooting outdoors, especially now that you're in the sound era. In silence, it would not have been that big a deal because you had cameras that were hand cranked. There was no electricity needed.
Yeah.
And they were highly portable. So, that was not that big a deal. And that's why in the silence, they go out to Culver City and you see the Culver Hotel and they do all of that. And they do it rarely in the talkie era, simply because you've got to have electrical generation. The camera has to run at the same speed, and the camera has to run at the same speed as the sound recording equipment, which is connected to that.
Yeah.
And when they shoot outdoors, even when it's a bright sunny day, they still bring in these big, what they call brute lights. They're huge, and they have light because you would still get shadows.
Yes.
Outdoors. So they illuminate everything, which means generators. Plus, you have to have what they now call craft services, which is the food for the crew and the cast.
Yeah, of course.
And porta potties. and I mean, there's all sorts of things you have to bring to a location. So it's very expensive. And that's why not too many Roach films in the talkie era, and increasingly so as you get further into the talkie era, have outdoor location shooting. So this is shot entirely outdoors, the Hoose-Gow, and not only shot outdoors, but the opening of it has a really good tracking shot where the camera car is in front of this paddy wagon that's speeding down the road.
Yeah.
And then they have the great crane shot where they go up, 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 up to show Charlie Hall and the watchtower. And then, plus there's the expense of that gag. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. So anyway, this had some money behind it. And so for me, it's the most impressive of their early talkie films. And it also shows how well and how quickly they had adapted to sound, because recording outdoors also provides other problems with wind noise. There's nothing that's looped in this film. A lot of times, particularly anything made for television in the 1970s by Universal, whenever they shoot outdoor, if you see a Columbo episode, if you know Columbo,
yes,
like a detective with Peter Falk, they do a lot of shooting outdoors, but everything is always post-recorded, and you can tell because it sounds absolutely sterile, as if they're in a studio. It doesn't sound anything like what it would have sounded with the actual outdoor track.
Yes, of course.
The ambience of the noise and just the wind. When I worked on a professional film, I learned that before you shoot anything, indoors or outdoors, the sound man goes for a solid minute of room tone.
Okay, yeah.
Because the actual room itself, devoid of anybody talking, has a particular sound.
Yeah.
And if you need to post-record something, if you need to loop it, you make sure to lay in that room tone to make it a more even match with what is actually recorded. So anyway, that's a long way of saying that they would have needed windscreens, and they probably still needed what they called blimps and barneys, which were things that covered the camera to prevent the camera motor noise from getting on the soundtrack, even outdoors. So it's an involved process, and the fact that they pulled it off as well as they did for a film from late 1929 is very impressive indeed. So it does not have any trace of early talky static staginess, at all. It's a lively film. It moves. You compare that to Unaccustomed as We Are, and it's just a quantum leap ahead in just a few months. So they had really adapted not only in the filming but also in the editing, and we'll get into that later. So I like I say, I recently did a commentary about this film for the Flicker Alley Blu-ray. So I've got my notes here.
Excellent,
And I
excellent.
can go right down the whole film chronologically. So this might actually be a more coherent podcast from my end.
Oh,
than
no,
I
no, no,
normally am,
no, we
where I
don't
go
want,
all
we don't
over
want
the
that.
place.
We don't want any coherence. No, 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 no.
Okay, well, you can get this film. There seem to be two prints that are circulating. There's one that has the original titles and one that has film classics titles from the 1940s.
Yeah.
And of course, when we were kids watching on television in the 60s, we thought that the film classics plaque title, we thought that was the original title.
Yes,
We
yeah.
had no idea
Yeah.
that was also, we'd get the Blackhawk prints that had their own titles on them, and we go, why don't they have the original film classics title on it? We had no idea that was also a reissue title. So in any event, there are three cameramen credited. Only George Stevens is credited, but there were two others, being Len Powers and Glenn Robert Kirshner. And Len Powers worked on some of the other Laurel and Hardy films. I think Kirshner only worked on this one.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a very interesting career, which you can look up. I think I went into it in great detail in Magic Behind the Movies, but just suffice it to say that he spent a lot of his later career in Hawaii and made a documentary about Hawaii and wrote a book about it. And he also lived to be something like 101 or 102 years old. Wow. And was the eldest surviving member of the ASC, the American Society of Cinematographers.
Okay.
And about a year before he died, and I hope there's a tape of this, but he came back to the mainland and gave a lecture all about his early days in Hollywood. So I hope that survives somewhere, because he lived to a ripe old age. But anyway, I don't have a picture of him, but I do have some pictures of Len Powers during the filming of Hoose-Gow, because there was an article in American Cinematographer,
yes,
where he was interviewed in it. And so there are some pictures of him. There's also, at least, now I hadn't seen this before, but when we put together the photo galleries for the Blu-ray for Flicker Alley, we found this still. I think Trevor Dorman had it. In fact, I know he did. And it's sort of a chorus line where it's Jimmy Parrott and Laurel and Hardy and George Stevens and Lloyd French and a couple of other people, and it's on location, and they're all just sort of doing a conga line. So that's a nice little behind the scenes shot. And there are also some behind the scenes shots of Stan with Big Lois and Little Lois.
Yes.
And Little Lois seems to be particularly intrigued by a microphone. There's a standing microphone, and she's, what is this? So, so there are some nice behind the scenes stills. Anyway, the opening music, in case you are wondering, is a tune called That's My Weakness Now. And that had been used before for We Fall Down, which made sense because I suppose the boys were enticed by the feminine charms of the two Good Time Girls. It was written by Sam H. Stepp and Bud Green, their first big hit, popularized by Helen Kane, who was the original Boop Boop a Doop girl, and appropriately was later used in a Betty Boop cartoon called Stopping the Show. And now, if you're wondering where Hoose-Gow comes from, that is an American corruption of a Spanish word called Hoose-Gow, Juzgao, which means jail. And it comes from an earlier word, Juzgado, Juzgado, which means a tribunal, a panel of judges. And evidently, in Mexico or in Spanish-speaking countries, the panel of judges and the jail were in the same building. If you were found guilty, they walked you down the hall to where the jail was.
That's it.
And so Hoose-Gow became Hoose-Gow,
Ah,
probably
right.
popularized by cowboys who were talking with the Spanish people, or probably got thrown into Hoose-Gow.
Yeah.
And it first shows up in print in a Mutt and Jeff comic strip
Ah,
in 1908, where Bud Fisher uses it in a caption for Mutt and Jeff. Now, there was, however, and I think this may have been in the inspiration for the movie, about 7/10 of a mile northeast from the Roach Studio, there was a restaurant, probably also a speakeasy, called the Hoose-Gow. The Hoose-Gow, and I can send you a picture of it.
yeah, yeah.
The
Yeah.
it was a restaurant at 7732 Washington Boulevard in Culver City, 7/10 of a mile northeast from the Roach Studio, which was at 8822 Washington Boulevard. And it's highly likely that if you knew the right people, you could get some of the potent potables at this place. So I would imagine that that a lot of people probably frequented this restaurant. It was right nearby. You could have
Yeah.
walked to it from the Roach
Yeah.
Studios.
Yeah, yeah.
Just as you could have walked to Frank Sebastian's Cotton Club nightclub. That was right around the corner from the Roach Studios. I know Marvin Hatley went there several times to see the performers. He went to see Louis Armstrong and Fats Waller, the great jazz pianist. He told me Fats Waller had huge hands. It was like shaking hands with a bunch of bananas. So that might have inspired Blotto, these places. And there was also a big lumber mill right across the street from the Roach Studios, which might have inspired Busybody.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, okay.
So, if you ever look at have you ever seen the Sanborn fire insurance maps
A while ago, yeah, a little while
of
ago.
Culver City?
Yeah.
They're great because when they go, they're very detailed. And when they show you the Roach Studios, they show you what each building was.
Oh, great. Okay.
So,
yeah.
this is makeup, this is wardrobe, this
Yeah.
is research, this is the projection room.
Yeah.
It's all there for you, and surrounding environs of Culver City, so you can get to see what the buildings around them were, and likely inspired some of the stories. So anyway, the Hoose-Gow restaurant might have been an inspiration for this film.
Isn't that swell?
Well, we have that great tracking shot at the beginning, and that is evidently, as I look at my notes, speeding south down Marengo Street, and it's going to the south gate of the Los Angeles County Hospital, which was at 1651 Marengo, Marengo, and that had been used by Laurel and Hardy in 1927 as a prison gate for the second 100 years.
Yes, that's
and
right. Yeah.
come to find out that Stan Laurel by himself had used it earlier in 1924 for one of the Joe Rock comedies called Detained.
Yep.
And even before that, Chaplin had used it in 1916 for his film Police.
Oh, okay.
So I've got all of those films on DVD or Blu-ray about 20 feet behind me. So I've got to go take a look at those and take a look and see. And I don't know if the gate is still there, but anyway, the next building is movies make their own geography. So we go from Marengo Street and that gate, and then when the paddy wagon goes through the gate, then as soon as they go through that shot, and now it's the shot of everybody. All the different prisoners departing the paddy wagon.
That's right.
That's a different location entirely. That's 2 miles north. And I've been there, not as one of the people being incarcerated. I was there around 1980 when I was in the thick of doing my research for Magic Behind the Movies. That was the Los Angeles East Side Division Jail, but popularly known as the Lincoln Heights Jail. At 419 North Avenue 19, it says here.
So it was a jail.
And it was built. It was an actual jail.
Right.
And still in use in 1929. It was still in use until 1965.
Right.
It was built in 1909, expanded in 1913, and again in 1931. And it still stands today. It's designated as a Los Angeles Historic Cultural Monument, although I don't know if anybody's doing anything with it. But I can tell you that in the early 80s, probably 80 or 81, I went there with a group of people from an old-time radio preservation group I belong to called Sketvedt, which is the Society for the Preservation and Encouragement of Radio, Drama, Variety, and Comedy. And so they are trying to preserve all the old recordings of radio shows.
Right.
Debbie Reynolds, who was, in addition to her talents as a singer and actress and dancer, was also a very dedicated Hollywood historian and paid out of her own pocket thousands and thousands of dollars to buy up what MGM and other lots were disposing of.
Oh, yeah, I
These
heard about that.
costumes
Yeah.
and stills and everything. And she had stored at the Lincoln Heights jail row upon row upon row upon row of file cabinets filled with 8x10s and movie magazines.
Wow.
And I was going there with the Skretvedt people because she had a whole bunch of, I think they were Lux Radio Theater radio shows. They were movie-oriented radio shows. These were made during World War II when metal was being rationed, and so they were glass transcriptions.
Oh.
And if you look at those cross-eyed, they will break. And unfortunately, they had been stored flat, which you never want to do with records. You always want to store them upright.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, some know-nothing had stored them flat so that the ones underneath were cracking underneath the weight of the ones on top of them.
Of course.
So the Skretvedt people had gotten permission from Debbie Reynolds, I think, to get those out and record them and or piece them back together and preserve them before they all broke, you see.
Yeah.
So I went along. Other people were taking care of that, but I went along so I could see what Debbie had on in the way of Laurel and Hardy still.
You sneaky thing.
And there were lots and lots and lots of them. And I pulled out about 50 of them that, were great behind the scenes shots that I hadn't seen before.
Wow.
It was the first time that I'd seen Margaret Seddon as Mother Peep in Babes in Toyland. I had no idea up to that point that there had been anybody except Florence Roberts. And I went, oh, and she had two stills that were the exact same scene with just a different actress. And I went, oh, got to use that. That's a great illustration of, all we changed in this was the actress. So there was a guy there, a tall, heavy-set, bald, bearded guy with wire-rimmed glasses named Dr. Walter Doherty. And I don't know if he was friends with Debbie Reynolds or just an employee of the jail or what, but he was the guy who was supposed to be guarding all of these precious things from vultures like me, who probably would have loved to take these things home. Now, I would have returned them had I been able to do that, but some people don't. I have too many stories about that sort of thing. But anyway, I said, is there any way I can get negatives made from these? And he said, sure, just give me the film and $50. So much for the safety of these precious items under the guardianship, the stewardship of Dr. Walter Doherty.
Oh, brilliant.
So I found a way to give him $50 and he specified what film he wanted. It was 2 1/4 negative, which is a large negative.
Yeah. And
somewhere I still have those negatives and proof sheets, and I used a few of them in Magic Behind the Movies. So thanks, Debbie and Walt. That's 45 years ago. So anyway, that's my story about the Lincoln Heights jail. And I imagine all of that stuff now is probably with her son, Todd Fisher, who is a lot of it now has gone to the Motion Picture Academy Museum.
Right.
Many years after they rebuffed Debbie's pleas for them to buy it and take care of it. Now they're going to him with hat in hand and going, please don't be mad at us. And so he's allowing them to display a lot of her stuff.
Hey, come on, inside.
Come on, get in. Get in.
Come on.
Come on, get in.
Inside, boys. Come on.
Come on, back it.
Come on inside, fellas. Come on. Come on, Leo.
I know you cheap, you.
Hey, what are you guys trying to do? Get away? Come on, get out of there.
Get your leg over.
Hurry up. Come on.
Okay, let's see. Oh, the police patrol wagon from which the prisoners disembark is a 1928 Studebaker Big Six, according to a website, a really great website called the Internet Movie Car Database.
Oh, okay.
Which is at imcdb.org. So it's not IMDb, which is the Internet Movie Database that a lot of us use. It's the imcdb.org. And the license plate is 017118 and something else. Anyway, it's a 1928 Studebaker Big Six. That's the first thing that we see. And it's an interesting moment when Laurel and Hardy are in the back of the paddy wagon trying to get out.
Yeah.
You hear Tiny Sanford speaking off camera. Now, that doesn't strike us as being anything unusual now, but it was
of course
in 1928 where you have somebody speaking, but you don't see them. And it's a way of getting two perspectives, or basically two shots in one. So they once again are using sound creatively, and they did quite a bit of that, surprisingly, and unaccustomed as we are. I mean, there's a celebrated gag where at the end Stan trips at the top of the stairs and you don't see him fall, but you hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember Richard Currier saying that was the one gag I'll never forget, because you never saw him, you just heard him fall down the stairs. And that was quite a creative revolution.
Yeah, revolutionary.
In those days.
Of course it was. Yeah.
So anyway, you have Tiny Sanford saying, what are you trying to do? Get away! And you hear him in the background. You know where he is because you have seen him in a shot prior to it.
Yeah.
But they don't have to show him speaking.
Officer, we didn't have anything to do with this. We were only watching the raid.
Is that so? Well, why didn't you tell it to the judge?
We did, but he wouldn't believe us.
Of course he wouldn't believe you.
You can't keep us in here. We've done nothing.
Oh, I can't,
I won't shush.
Well,
Shut up.
Oh! Oh! Now, you two get over there. I'll tend to you later. Go on! Get out of here!
Stan and Ollie say, we were only watching the raid. Well, this is 1929. Prohibition is still being enforced in September of 1929.
Oh, right.
And the tacit implication is that the boys were in or near a speakeasy.
Right. I never got that. I never understood that. Of course. Okay.
Well, what would be raided in 1929?
Yeah, I was thinking some kind of a bank
prohibition-
or something like that. I was thinking it was like a bank raid.
Well, prohibition agents would come in, and anybody who loves movies of this period really needs to see the Ken Burns 3-part documentary on Prohibition,
right?
because it really does give you a great historical background for America in these late 20s years.
Okay.
And there were, in fact, 2 Prohibition agents who were celebrated named Izzy and Moe. And they were the ones who would come up with all outrageous disguises and things to get into these speakeasies. And then they would have a bunch of cops waiting outside. Famously, there was a lady who had been a movie cowboy named Texas Guinan, Guinan.
Mm-hmm.
And she would welcome the patrons by saying, "Hello, suckers," because they knew they were being charged outrageous money for alcohol.
Yeah.
And she would have a floor show with a lineup of girls, and her catchphrase was, "Give the little girls a great big hand." Well, one night, Izzy and Moe were in attendance without her knowing it, and she said, "Give the little girls a great big hand." And Izzy and Moe stood up and said, "Give the little girl a great big handcuff." And they raided the joint, and they escorted everybody off in the paddy wagon, just as you see in the Hoose-Gow.
Oh, see,
so these things happen.
I see that in a different light now. You see, my only source of
Yeah.
reference for that is Bugsy Malone, the speakeasies.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, watch the Prohibition
Yeah.
documentary. It's fascinating. It's really well done.
Yeah.
As they're being taken off the paddy wagon, Stan is rather unexpectedly belligerent in this moment, where he's saying, "I won't shush."
Yeah.
And that's kind of uncharacteristic of Stan.
Yeah.
Where he says, "The judge wouldn't believe us," and of course he wouldn't believe you. So justice evidently acted very swiftly in this case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, Stan is wearing the same suit that he wore in Do Detectives Think.
Yes.
And I've mentioned this a few times, that you can tell it's that one because it's pinstriped and it has a little rip in the lapel,
That's
courtesy of habeas corpus.
Yeah.
That's where it gets that little rip in the lapel.
Yeah.
And so they kept that in the Roach wardrobe department, because anytime the boys were supposed to be really down and out, as in One Good Turn,
Yeah.
he goes back to that suit, and it gets progressively, the elbows get ripped and the knees and the cuffs, it gets worse and worse and worse. And the last time I think they used it was in Hollywood Party in 1934,
Oh, wow.
by
Yeah.
which time somebody had repaired the lapel,
Yeah.
but it's still that same suit, which he was still able to fit in 7 years later. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. This is Tiny Sanford's 10th film with Laurel and Hardy, and I believe his first talkie with them.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And including the foreign language versions, he would ultimately appear in 29 films with Laurel and Hardy. And of course, I always say that, people say, did Laurel and Hardy make 106 films or 107? No, they made 125 because people forget to count
Yeah.
the foreign language
Of
ones.
course.
And we don't have all of them, but the ones we have show us that they could be very different
Yeah.
from the English language versions. Politicarius particularly is
Yeah.
astonishingly different from Chickens Come Home. So they are separate entities. Tiny Sanford is 35 years old in this film because he was born in Osage, Iowa on February 26, 1894. There's also another prison guard at the very left of these early scenes where they're disembarking, a guy named Leo Sulky. And Leo Sulky had previously appeared with Laurel and Hardy in Love 'Em and Weep as the manager of the Pink Pup. And he's also, most prominently for Laurel and Hardy, he's in Habeas Corpus. He's also in some stills of Habeas Corpus. And he's the very impassioned, cross-eyed detective on the phone talking with undercover agent Charlie Rogers, who is the purported butler for the crazy scientist.
Detective Ledoux, I remember.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Ledoux. Monsieur Ledoux. Could have been a Chaplin movie. Leo Sulky made many more films for Max Sennett than he did for Roach. He made about 20 films with Roach. And born in Cincinnati, Ohio on December 6, 1874. And unlike so many of the cast members for Laurel and Hardy, he did not die at 58 years old or 60. He died at 82 in Los Angeles on June 3rd, 1957. That's one thing, typing up these little miniature biographies for different things that I do. I'm 67 now.
Yeah.
And I'm older than Oliver Hardy and many, many, many of the other people, so
yeah, it's amazing.
I think it's a combination of working very hard and smoking.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
Mainly.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well, I don't know. I don't have a budget for this film. Some of the films, I think I found most of them with Richard Lewis Ward's book on the Hal Roach Studios.
Yeah.
He had a lot of information about what different films cost.
Yeah, it's a great book.
And so I would imagine that this one costs substantially more than most of the shorts, just because of what we've talked about, all the outdoor necessities, the lights and the generators and the food and porta potties and everything else. And not only that, but this film has a very large cast. There's, I think, at least 35 people who show up. If you go to Dave Lord Heath's website, Another Nice Mess, or lordheath.com, I think he names 27 of them. And I'm sure there are other extras among the convicts. So, and all the technicians and creative people. This was bringing an army out there. So then we have the apples scene. Right after the opening scene where everybody's disembarking from the paddy wagon, we have the scene with the apples.
What have we got to do now, Marina? Shut up. Everything is all fixed. You see that gentleman over there? He gave me these. All we have to do is throw these over the wall. That's the signal for his pals to get you and I out.
This strikes me as a little illogical because Laurel and Hardy have just arrived at this location, and they evidently the judge wouldn't believe them, so there was some courtroom thing. But if Laurel and Hardy have just been transported from wherever the raid was to this prison, and if they were only watching the raid, how would Ollie have been able to talk to Leo Willis, and how would Leo have had the time to coordinate with his buddies to be on the other side of the wall with this rope ladder?
Now you're taking it literally.
Yeah, well, yes. Well, maybe in the days of cell phones, he could have, while they were being transported, he could have called his buddies, but they didn't have cell phones in September of 1929. So I'm choosing to believe that this is a service that Leo routinely provides to many convicted pals. They're just always there every day.
Yeah.
Because obviously Tiny has encountered Leo, because when he comes off the wagon, Tiny goes, come on, Leo.
Come on, yes, he does.
He's the one
Yes,
guy,
he does.
The one guy of all those convicts. Charlie Hall's another one. So he has 2 roles in this film because he's one of the convicts and then he's the guy in the lookout tower.
Yes, that's right.
We're not supposed to notice that, but he says, "Come on, Leo."
Yeah, I spotted that.
So Leo is a regular inhabitant of this prison, or the paddy wagon at least.
And why doesn't he want to get out with the apples? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
What are you giving them away for?
Well, he might be one of these guys who functions better inside the prison walls than outside.
Yeah.
You know, there are people who intentionally get back in because they can't hack it outside the prison walls.
Possibly so. Yeah.
So now, of course, we know Leo Willis from other films. He is not as helpful in Below Zero, where he is the guy who's running after Laurel and Hardy to try to get the wallet.
Yeah.
Nor in Their Purple Moment, where he's the taxi driver who helps himself to the big feast that Ollie thinks Stan can pay for. Nor The Live Ghost, where he's one of the sailors who falls prey to the bet you $1 you can't keep the egg in your mouth without breaking it a gag.
What are you going to do with that egg?
I'll bet you $1 you can't put it in your mouth without breaking it.
Go on, take him on. You remember when you done it with a billiard ball?
That's a cinch. Get your buck ready.
So he's one of those too. And he's an interesting guy. He was born in Wapanucka, Oklahoma.
Bet he was.
Say that 6 times real fast.
You made that up.
Wapanucka, Oklahoma. January 5th, 1890. And died at 62 in Monterey County, California on April 10th, 1952. And he was a single father because his wife died in 1926 and he had 2 young daughters, which he raised by himself. So I would imagine he had some other avenue of employment besides working in pictures. But anyway, he, hooray for him. So I don't know that he ever remarried. So, he had his own story to tell.
I suppose the other thing, of course, with just talking about dying at young ages, of course, in early Hollywood, all the sort of special effects, the amount of sort of asbestos and things they were probably using, and things like, for fake snow and all of that stuff, talking in below zero, they probably inhaled a load of stuff that was toxic to them. That they may well have contributed as well.
There's a gag in Buster Keaton's film from 1922 called The Pale Face, where he knows the Indians are going to tie him up to a post and try to burn him alive, and so he finds this big roll of asbestos, and he makes a suit out of asbestos and coats himself in this thing so that he doesn't burn up. Well, he doesn't burn up, but maybe there are later effects that might have happened.
Yeah. They got him in the end.
Yeah, I was going to say about this scene with the rope ladder. Ollie says he's going to get you and I out, which should be you and me out. But anyway, there's one thing where a great shot where Ollie's holding these apples and he looks at us in a very conspiratorial manner. I love the way that he communicates with the audience. He knows we're watching.
Yes, and
there's actually a shot with Stan where Stan looks right at us when the apple's caught in his mouth, and he says, "Oh, what are we going to do?" And he looks right at us. So they're playing to the audience in this scene.
Oh, massively, yeah. I hate that apple scene though. I find that really kind of, I don't know, it's claustrophobic, but that apple stuck in his mouth. Oh God, it really gets me every time.
Come on, cough up.
Cough! Come on, don't get excited now. Come on, the man will choke to this. Cough once. Cough. Come on. Come on. Come on. Go.
Do something, will you?
I can't do anything. Get it out, he's liable to choke to death.
Oh! Why, lucky for you that it wasn't a pineapple.
Well, I'm sure he only had a little sliver of the apple with the peel shown, just a little slice of it in there. But one thing you might want to concentrate on is the editing of it, because it's beautifully cut and shot. There's this, after Tiny says, "Stick 'em up," there's this 2-shot of Stan and Tiny, and then they go to a closer shot of Stan with Tiny underneath searching for the apples. Then they go to a close-up of Ollie miming, "Where's the apple?"
Yes.
He doesn't say it, but you know that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
And they go back to the close-up of Stan and Tiny, and Stan opens his mouth to show that he got the apple here. And then they go to a reaction shot of Ollie smiling, and then they go back to Stan and Tiny where Stan swallows the apple. It's really nicely cut.
Yeah.
And involves 3 or 4 setups.
Yeah.
So, and every time they do a setup, that takes a lot of time in between shots. So they really wanted that to be, they wanted the emphasis necessary that would have been provided by close-ups.
Yes.
And, that's, if there is something that's a hallmark of the Hal Roach Studios, it's reaction shots.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
You get as many reactions as you can in addition to whatever the original gag was. You have Ollie doing his close-up and looking up at Stan, and then Stan looking dumb like I don't know what caused that when he caused it. And then back to Ollie.
Yeah.
And Hal Roach said you could get 3 more laughs on top of the laugh that you got from the original gag with reaction shots. And that's one thing that's really acutely missing in the Fox and MGM films of the 40s.
Yes.
They were not aware of that, and they didn't. They lost so much by not having those.
Do you think, just talking about the sort of the editing part of it, because I mean, as someone who's never made films, I take them at face value, but I don't really think too much about how it was made because I don't know how it was made. So when you're talking about Courier or whoever actually making those cuts and splicing that together and editing it in that way, is that unusual for a 2-reel comedy to be that kind of careful with shots like that? Would you say?
I think it showed the special care that Roach gave to his films, and also when you watch them in a theater with an audience, as I was privileged to do a couple of weeks ago, I hosted an event at the Old Town Music Hall in El Segundo, California, and we ran Laurel with packed houses on both shows.
Oh, fantastic!
And when you have a full theater audience, you really get a sense for how beautifully cut these films are, because the live audience's laughter just begins to subside, and then they pick up the action again.
Yeah.
And that's why when you're watching them on television, when you don't have that, as Dan said, on TV the films seem so slow.
Yeah. I get that
because you don't have an audience's laughing reaction is going to be longer than yours. And yours is going to be milder watching it at home. It's not going to be a full-bodied laugh as it would be. That's the communal experience of being in a movie theater, which is why we need to preserve that and not just have streaming for everything. We really need the communal movie because that's the audience. That's how films are designed to be shown. At least these films were. But yes, I mean, they took their time, and MGM let them. I guess they weren't quite as strict about a film being released on a specific date as they were with their own product. I think MGM probably at the beginning of every season would go to exhibitors and they'd say, all right, this year we're going to have 3 Clark Gables, 2 Mickey Rooneys, this, it did. And they could tell you what they were going to make that year and when it was going to be delivered and pretty much stick to it. Maybe with the short subjects, they had enough series. So they said, well, if we don't have Laurel and Hardy this week, we'll have something else to put in there.
Yeah.
So that gave Roach the luxury of a little extra time.
That's interesting.
That they didn't have with other studios.
Yeah, it's just as I'm writing the book on the silent films, I'm looking through the trade papers, and there's a lot of talk about, and of course we're in that crossover period of Pathé to MGM, and there's a lot of talk from Roach and Warren Doan about quality. But this is quality. We're making quality features here, so we're putting so much care and attention into making these shorts just as much as you would if you're making these lavish feature films. And I'm thinking, what initially they're talking a lot about bringing in for the All-Stars. They're bringing in the falling stars from the box office, and that's quality. That they're seeing that as quality for their pictures. But I'm thinking, with this editing process, is it also about the actual way they're putting these films together in terms of not just the sets? We can see how lavish the sets look at times, and that's beautiful and that's quality. But also the way that they're actually cutting it and the time they're taking and processing it that way.
Yeah, I don't think that there was any that MGM changed anything as far as the physical lot or the equipment used at the lot, but there was an infusion of more money.
Yeah.
Even though MGM was not that old a studio, they had very quickly become the most popular and prestigious of the studios within just about 3 years.
Yeah.
and which probably annoyed Adolf Zucker at Paramount and Carl Laemmle at Universal no end, because they'd been in business, both of them, since 1912.
Yeah.
And here comes MGM in 1924, and already they're
Yeah.
the top of the mark,
Yeah.
So there was more money, even though the Roach films never looked cheap. I'm always amazed at the design of the interiors. They created their own sets and everything at right there at the Roach lot, and so they never look like cheap films. But there is an extra polish to them once they get to MGM, which starts with Sugar Daddies, and probably maybe a little bit more time being able to, because they do look nicer than the Pathays do. Even when you have good prints of the Pathays, as we have now with the 1927 Blu-rays. Clearly MGM brought a little bit, and certainly in terms of advertising and distribution, MGM was far superior. Pathé was kind of faltering, and Pathé never seemed to notice that Laurel and Hardy were becoming popular, even as the MGMs were starting to be distributed. Pathé still had several left to distribute, and you would think that by February of 1928, when they brought out Flying Elephants, by that point you'd think that somebody had told them, you have Laurel and Hardy in this film. Maybe you should make that point known in the advertising. Well, they don't.
At least on the poster.
Stan Laurel, it's Stan Laurel, Jimmy Finlayson, and Fay Lanfear.
That's right,
who was in it for about 5 seconds. But she had been a beauty contest winner, so that's why she gets
crazy
big billing, even though she's barely in the film. So
it's crazy.
MGM certainly was a good move for Roach. And just as you can see the absence of MGM cash once you see Saps at Sea and A Chump at Oxford, they look much more modest than the MGM films did.
Yeah.
So they provided better distribution and a lot of the yearly budget, whatever the Bank of America wasn't providing, MGM put up. So and yes, I think there was more time given to the films once MGM was the distributor. Let me see. I was going to talk about the end of the first sequence with Tiny Sanford. The way they dislodge the apple from Stan's mouth is Stan accidentally elbows Tiny in the stomach, and Tiny kicks Stan in the rear end, and he supposedly swallows.
Yes,
the apple.
That's right. That's right.
They do that with a little tricky bit of editing. They didn't have the Heimlich maneuver yet.
I love how Tiny Sanford's trying to help him by throttling him. He's got his hand around his throat.
Throttling him, yes. That's going to help him get it out of his window. Right. Yeah, both of them, some say, he's liable to choke to death. Of course, Stan is not soothed by that information. And we did not have the Heimlich maneuver until 1974, so that it was not known back then. But supposedly he swallows the whole thing. Of course, Tiny says, lucky for you, it wasn't a pineapple.
Yeah, that's right.
You can imagine how painful that would be, trying to swallow an uncut pineapple. At the end, we do the joke where they have some very intentionally obvious undercranking when Stan and Ollie realize that they're outside the prison gate.
Yes.
You're free. Come on, let's get out. Oh.
And of course, Stan has to knock on the door, as he will do later on in Scram, and I think Below Zero. He doesn't. The idea of Stan is not very good at being devious.
That's right. Yeah.
He doesn't understand the concept of duplicity very well. He's really an innocent, so he just knocks on the door, and Ollie says, "No, we're free."
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And so we have that great undercrank shot where they're really running toward the open field. Getting a joke out of how undercranked it is, really.
Yeah, that's right.
And then Tiny showing what a great shot he is with this shotgun.
Yeah.
Fires 2 shots and evidently hits both of them in the posterior. and they come back with their fannies smoking. And I'm surprised they didn't do the joke about "you nearly blew my brains out."
Yeah.
Because they do that in Wrong Again and in Chump at Oxford. I think it's Harry Bernard both times as the policeman who has similarly a flame posterior. And the way that they did this, I talked to Thomas Benton Roberts, who was a prop man, and he's in Two Tars and worked on many other films. And he told me that at least in unaccustomed as we are, in the scenes where Thelma Todd's dress is smoking and supposed to be on fire, and he said, well, I sprayed some lacquer proteum on Thelma Todd. It looked like smoke, but it didn't burn. So Thomas Benton Roberts told me that on June 14th, 1980, at his home in Long Beach, California.
Okay.
So whatever lacquer, I looked it up. I really couldn't find anything about lacquer proteum specifically, but whatever that was, it was something that you could light and it wouldn't hurt you.
Okay. So he sprayed their backsides basically with something like that.
Yeah. So you sprayed it and you got a smoking effect, but it was not going to injure you. So so lacquer proteum.
There we go.
Let's see what else I have here.
Oh, we're talking about talking about logic in scenes as well. When they get outside of that jail, and you're always thinking, "No, just run." So he knocks on the door, which you think, no, don't knock on the door. And why do they run straight across to the fields? Why didn't they go around the corner like them other guys did?
Well, this is why they got caught in the first place. Probably,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now the balance of the film is by what they called the Arnaz Ranch, because it was originally a huge ranchero, and after different years, it would get whittled away further and further and further as the property got sold off. And Roach evidently owned quite a bit of property there, and the signature site of it is the eucalyptus trees, these big trees with this white bark. So the very distinctive looking trees. And according to our locations maven, Chris Bungo, who of course has put on the internet many then and now videos of different Laurel and Hardy shooting locations, Chris tells me that the road camp sequence was filmed as what is now the 2200 block of Hillsborough Avenue, and the specific place where Stan and Ollie's byplay with their pickaxes was filmed was in what is today the backyard of 9126 Hillsborough Drive.
Right.
So I did a Google search for that address, and sure enough, it comes up, and it's a rather modest-looking home, painted yellow, and it's there. And I don't know if anybody has come there. Said, do you know that your backyard was where Laurel and Hardy filmed this sequence? I don't know if anybody there is aware of it. But the house is still there, and probably built in the 40s, I would guess. Yeah. Evidently, most of those eucalyptus trees were torn down in the 1940s, so it's been a long time since those were there. But you get to see them in Charlie Chase films and Our Gang films and other films where they did still do location shooting. They did a fair amount of location shooting in the early 30s with the Our Gang films, because they actually did have a schoolhouse there, so they used that for Teacher's Pet and other ones, and they shoot outdoors. And as I mentioned, Stan's wife, Lois, visited the location during the filming, and she brought along little daughter Lois, and she was 2 months shy of her second birthday. And there are several stills of little Lois being intrigued by a microphone, just a standing microphone.
Why don't you be careful?
I couldn't help it when you talked.
Now watch what you're doing. Oh! Give me the pick. Here. You can't do any harm with that. Oh! Break your neck. I just don't say all my life. Hey, you guys.
Let's see. Oh, now there's all the business with the little pickaxes. At first, well, I guess Stan does wind up with the smaller one because it's the more lethal of the two. Anyway, I'm trying to remember now if he winds up with the big one or the little one.
No, well, Ollie gives him the big one.
Ollie gives him the big one. All right.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, the press sheet tells us, it says, quote, the comedy business of the scene called for Laurel to nick Hardy in the seat of his pants with his pick. A real pick being used as the rubber pick looked fakey in action. The nicking was to occur on Laurel's uplift of the pick, but unfortunately for Hardy, his huge bulk, I must have loved that, moved too close to Laurel's downward swing of the heavy pick, and he received a very real nicking in his flesh. The microphone recorded a yell of pain that burst the light valve. There we go, the light valves.
Yes.
That was the bane of Richard Currier and many arguments he had with Elmer Regis about the light bulb, the sensitive light valve, which is just a little ribbon, a little metal ribbon in the recording, but it was very sensitive to loud noises.
Yeah.
Anyway, it burst the light valve as Hardy jumped out of the scene. Everyone on the set but Laurel and Hardy roared with laughter. Only they knew what had really happened. First aid treatment was administered to the injured part, and Hardy was before the camera again within an hour. Stan Laurel was unhappy about the accident, and everyone that had laughed offered an apology, but the fun-loving comedian treated the accident as a joke and insisted that director James Parrott proceed with the day's work.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's probably one of the many scars that his widow Lucille mentioned to me. She said he had little scars and bumps all over his body that were souvenirs of different things that had happened to him in making these comedies. So, you know, they earned their paychecks,
didn't they?
And let's see, Charles Barr. Do you have the 1968 Charles Barr book?
Yes, I do.
Laurel and Hardy. I read that when I was a kid. Right after it came out, I was 9 years old, and that kind of goes into the psychology of the characters. It's kind of interesting that it goes into aspects of Laurel and Hardy films that a lot of other studies don't.
Yeah.
But Charles Barr really likes this film, and there's only 6 films in the whole book that get their own chapter in that book. And he says the little scene that develops with Stan, Ollie, and pickaxes fixes their relationship as satisfyingly as anything in the earlier films. To define Laurel and Hardy for someone who's never seen them, show them this. Stan is dumb to hit him. Ollie is dumb to make himself so vulnerable. Both are dumber to let it happen again.
Yes, all right.
So we have that, and then we have what almost became a catchphrase, not quite, and I'm kind of glad it didn't, which is "I'm going to break your neck."
Yeah, love it.
Ollie's saying that. Now we've had that in Perfect Day and They Go Boom, and we'll hear it again in Hog Wild when Ollie says, "If you don't be careful, I'm going to break your neck."
Yeah.
But happily, this did not become an established Hardy catchphrase because it's a little coarser than. Well, here's another nice mess you've gotten me into.
Yes.
Let's see. The officer who says, "Hey, you guys," is an actor named Harry Arras, Arras, who is in 20 Hal Roach films from 1926 to 1936. So he's one of the little bit players. If you go to Lord Heath's website, Another Nice Mess, which is at lordheath.com, he identifies many of the guys who were on the road crew. And, you know, we know of them, but we don't always recognize them because they're not shown very prominently. Now we have the camp cook, Dick Sutherland.
What do we have to do to get something to eat?
Get me some wood and I'll fix you up.
How much do you want?
Well, listen, the more wood you get, the more you get to eat.
Thank you. Come, Stanley.
He's very prominent in a Harold Lloyd feature called Grandma's Boy. And he was kind of destined to play tough guys, just owing to his very interesting facial features, because he suffered from acromegaly. And the movie's other well-known sufferer of acromegaly was a guy named Rondo Hatton, who was in Universal movies in the 1940s as the Creeper. He was the one horror character who did not have to use makeup, because it's an illness that distends not only the facial features, but also the internal organs. And as a result of that, people who have it tend to die rather young. And both Dick Sutherland and Rondo Hatton died at 52 because of this illness. But in any event, it gave him a career for a while.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So he has a great growly voice to match his visage. So, you know,
yes,
the more wood you chop, the more you get to eat. So he was a good character. So
yeah, was he in Battle of the Century? Was he in the dentist chair?
Yes, he's the dentist in the dentist's office, right? Right. Born in Benton, Kentucky in 1881, he's in 82 movies between 1919 and 1932, 5 of them for Hal Roach, and yes, memorable in Grandma's Boy. He worked for the railroads as a boilermaker in Denver and Salt Lake City before making a drastic career change in 1921 and debuting as an actor in the Dorothy DeVore feature Magnificent Brute. He might have been the title character, I don't know. But he also appeared prominently as the Maharaja in A Sailor Made Man with Harold Lloyd, who gave him his best role ever in Grandma's Boy. And then the guy who says, when Ali says...
Pardon me, but would you gentlemen be so kind as to make a little room for me and my friend?
Why, there's your table over there.
Thank you.
The guy who says, why, that's your table over there. That's a guy named Blackie Whiteford. And another, great face of early movies. I like the fact that they plant the idea. They have Tiny Sanford talking to Harry Harris, where he says,
I just got word the governor was coming out to inspect the camp.
Now, it's one shot, but it's placed well so that we know this is going to happen. And that's, very intelligent, that it doesn't just, it's not a surprise that the governor is coming. We have that anticipation working for us, so that when we have the bit with the watchtower collapsing and destroying about one half of all the structures that are there, we know, then when the governor's party comes at that moment, it doesn't seem contrived. We know what's going to happen beforehand. So that was a very intelligent placement. I would guess that would be, I don't know that that's even in the script, because the script doesn't have anything about the chopping the wood or the tower collapsing. It's a very short script, and it doesn't have anything about that at all. And that had to have been that one shot where Charlie Hall in the tower collapses. You can only do it once. It's like the train collapsing into the ravine in The General, or the house going over Buster Keaton and Steamboat Bill Jr. You better have a lot of cameras on this, because you want to make sure you get this preserved on film. There's a still, we don't have the film anymore, but Larry Seaman made a film called Stop, Look and Listen? And Oliver Hardy was an assistant director on it. And in Magic Behind the Movies, I have a shot where there's 5 cameras going on, all clustered together. And Hardy's sort of, herding all of them. And so I don't know what it was they were shooting, but it had to have been something where they wanted to make darn sure that they had coverage on it, because it was going to be a one-time only expensive shot.
Isn't that a pip? It certainly is.
So let's see, there are some things in the script that are not in the movie, and that's why I'm always happy to find these scripts, because, as Hal Roach always said, 50% of what's in the script will not play, meaning that it doesn't work too well when you're in front of the cameras. And of course, a lot of things were cut out because they would have been too expensive. Conversely, in this film, we have a sequence replaced with something that would have been much more expensive, which is all the wood cutting and the collapse of the tower. So originally, first of all, we have a repetition of a gag from Your Darn Tootin', the great salt and pepper shaker gag, which I love because it's so plausible. And I would imagine it probably has happened to people.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Just the other night, funnily enough, in our house.
Because someone was not careful to screw back the top of the salt shaker. Yeah,
that's right. Well, it was one of these things. It was a salt and pepper grinder. It's got like a little plastic top to it.
Yeah,
and you have to flip off. So my father-in-law was grinding the salt, but he hadn't taken the top off.
Uh-huh.
So he'd ground a load of salt or pepper into the tops, and then my wife came opened it up, and boosh.
That's the new way to do that gag. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, because for pepper now they have because you want the oil. You don't want pepper to have sat in the cellar forever because it loses all of its flavor. Yes. Okay, that's the new way to do that joke now, in case any filmmakers are listening. Well, I like that joke. I rather prefer the setup that they have in Your Darn Tootin', because it's an unbroken 2-shot.
Yeah.
And it's just them for like a minute and a half doing this gag with no cutting. And you get to see Ollie being otherwise occupied with tearing up pieces of bread into his soup and whatever, and unknowingly you get the anticipation because you see Stan doing it right next to him, and shaking it. trying to get the salt out and then just leaving the top on loosely. So you see Ollie and you get his reaction, and then he switches the soup and then does it again. They never learn. It's like whenever there's, I think it happens in, they go boom with the throwing the tack on the floor, or Angora Love.
Yeah.
Ollie steps on a tack, and instead of putting it somewhere where he'll never step on it, he moves it to the floor again. So what's going to happen? Of course, he's going to step on it again. So they never learn. In this one, they have to shoot it into two different shots. There's the Ollie shot and the Stan shot, and you can also tell if you look at the tablecloth by Stan, it was a windy day when they shot that sequence. So once again, being outdoors for the entirety of the filming sometimes has these little problems that you have to deal with. Weather in September can be rather changeable in California, so they probably had gloomy days as well as very hot days. I don't know. I should go back and look at the weather reports for the days that they shot. That's often very, very interesting. I know there's one moment where all of a sudden they go to a new shot of the road crew, and it's suddenly much sunnier and brighter. And I go, oh, new day. That's where they picked up filming. Okay, there's a lot of that in big business too, where particularly in the scene where they're at the door with doing the thing with the watch. They shot that in late December when daylight is very precious, and there's a lot of shadows in one shot. And then they cut to a new 3 shot, and it's bright and sunny. And I went, oh, okay, that's where they picked it up for the next morning. So, that's a fun little thing that you see in these movies that were shot entirely outdoors. So anyway, instead of the all of this, they originally had, instead of the salt and pepper shaker gag, they had a thing where Ollie removes his derby, and a convict comes and dumps a plate full of soup into Babe's hat instead of in his soup plate. And Babe puts the derby on, and soup runs all down his face. Now, why would he have had a reason to put his hat on? That's one problem. Yeah. And also, it's better to have Ollie unknowingly pour the soup on the shoe of a person of authority, Tiny Sketvedt, rather than just on himself.
Yeah.
Use that, and they did. They figured that out. That don't just have the soup go on Ollie. Ollie's had Ollie will have discomforting moments like this all the time. That doesn't get you anywhere in the story. Having it happen to Tiny Sanford, and him chasing them away as a result, that's what leads into the chopping the wood sequence. So I'm sure when they were in the midst of making it, these things occurred to them, and that's as George Marshall talked about with Pack Up Your Troubles. Stan got the idea for the finale for George Marshall's character to come back, and use that. I'm gonna someday I'm gonna see you and I'll have my knife. He said, well, that gives us the finish. He'll come back and he'll have his knife. So Laurel and Hardy are very good about that. About anything that they introduce, they tie it up. Usually, Bonnie Scotland, they didn't. Bonnie Scotland's one where it's just a mess at the end and there's a million story threads that aren't resolved. But that sort of thing happens routinely in Charlie Chase movies, where you just go, well, you spent 5 minutes setting this up. What happened with it? And rarely with Laurel and Hardy. They were much more concerned about story construction. Okay, the other scene that they had at this moment when they're having their food at the table was there's supposed to be a freshly cut white coconut cake. And Babe takes a large piece and is about to eat it as the warden returns and stands behind him. Stan tries to pantomime to Babe that the warden is behind him. Finally, Babe looks up, sees the warden, and shoves the piece of cake into his pocket. The warden orders the boys away from the table, follow Stan and Babe into a setup where there are a couple of large rocks against some trees. They enter and sit down. Babe reaches into his pocket and gets the piece of cake. Stan watches him, getting over that he is hungry. As Babe is in the act of taking a bite of the cake, a fly lights on it, and Babe has some difficulty trying to keep the fly off the cake. Stan watches this and finally gets an idea. He suggests to Babe that if he gave the fly a little piece of the cake, he wouldn't bother him. Babe turns to Stan and says with a smile, "That's the first spark of intelligence you have ever shown." Yes, as he is speaking, cut to insert of the piece of cake Babe is holding and show a large bee light on it. That would have been interesting to shoot. Maybe they would have animated it like the mouse with Roy Seawright, Yes. We also hear the buzz of the bee. Cut to close-up of Babe. Not noticing the bee, he quickly takes a large bite of the cake. As he is about to take another bite, we hear a faint buzz. Babe gets over he has swallowed something and starts feeling his stomach. There's another scene very similar to the apple where he's tried to eat something and maybe that's one reason why they didn't shoot this. Realizing that the bee is inside, Stan jumps to his feet, and by this time, Babe is going through all kinds of contortions, the bee presumably flying around inside him. Stan gets a shovel and starts hitting Babe, trying to kill the bee. As Stan swings back with the shovel, the warden enters and gets it in the face, knocking him to the ground. Stan realizes what he has done, and Babe forgets about the bee for the moment. The warden jumps to his feet and is about to beat up Stan and Babe when we hear sirens, and that would be the governor's party coming. Well, they didn't do that. They did the watchtower instead, which is much more visual and much more expensive, but they were still able to do it. Mr. Ginsburg was not working yet for the Roach Studios, so he didn't veto it. But they did rework that. The bee on the cake gag turned into a bee on a piece of cheese for the Rogue song.
Yes, that's right.
And there is a little bit of that footage in the trailer where Stan has swallowed something and Ollie is trying to figure out what that is. So that's the other little hunk of footage of Laurel and Hardy that survives from the Rogue song. So,
which was the very next film they filmed, of course.
Is that
Rogue
right?
Song.
Was it Rogue Song?
So the next.
I thought it was
next
Hollywood
one,
Review, but I don't know. Rogue Song is right before Night. Well, okay, no, it's in Rogue Song's a little later because Rogue Song I think is right before Night Owl. Well, I'll have to go back and check. Anyway.
It's the next one in your book.
All right.
Straight after the Hoose-Gow. It was filmed Monday, September 16th, and started filming on the 24th. That's right. They signed to appear. Yeah,
you are right. Okay, very good.
I know the guy that wrote the book. He's pretty good.
The guy who wrote the book can't remember everything. That's why he wrote the book. As my memory continues to fade, I'm very grateful that I wrote it all down. All right, now we have the sequence where the governor's party is coming in, and there's a lot of money in this shot too because we have several people in the governor's party. The most prominent being Eleanor Vanderveer, whom we've seen in Battle of the Century, and also in a pair of tights with Marion Byron and Anita Garvin. She has the wonderful scene where she sits on the ice cream cones, and also with her is a lady named Simona Boniface. And I don't know how familiar you are or other people in England with the Three Stooges films, but Simona Boniface is well known to Three Stooges devotees because she appears in lots of their comedies. And if you have a chance to see one called Half-Wit's Holiday, which is the last one with Curly, but also has a terrific pie fight sequence, she has a wonderful scene with Mo Howard where Mo is trying to the Three Stooges have been turned into gentlemen for the purposes of a psychologist winning a bet that it's not hereditary, that it's training that turns people into civilized people. And so this is their coming out party with all these very distinguished people, and they've started messing around with this whole table full of pies. And Mo sees very distinguished Simona Boniface coming, and he goes, "Uh-oh," and he throws a pie up on the ceiling, and he's trying to get away. And she says, "Young man, tell me about this wonderful experiment. This is so interesting to me that you are turning into gentlemen." And he says, "Well, I," and she says, "Young man, what's wrong? You act as though the sword of Damocles is hanging over your head." And they cut to the shot of the pie on the ceiling, and there's this little strand of pie filling, just like the hair on the sword of Damocles, that's keeping the pie from falling on them. And Mo says, "Lady, you must be psychic." And he runs off, and she says, "Wonder what's wrong with that young man." And she looks up, and it's perfectly timed. She looks up and just whammo, and it hits her perfectly. And she doesn't flinch. She just goes, and she throws the pie filling, and of course it hits somebody, and that is what precipitates the rest of the pie. But it's a wonderful shot, and she does it perfectly, and it's perfectly composed in editing. It's how to do that scene, So I always.
So what year is that from? What year was that?
It was shot in 46 and released in 47. So it's the last.
So they're still doing pie fights. They're still doing pie fights that late.
Heavens, the Three Stooges did them into the late 50s. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah.
Oh right.
Using a lot of the same footage from earlier films, but they they recycled footage from that particular film many times. Let me see. I was going to tell you something else about the cars and the different vehicles that come into that shot,
Oh, yeah.
courtesy of that Internet Movie Car Database, we now know that the motorcycle in advance of the Governor's Party, in case you had to know, is a 1928 Harley-Davidson JD. The cars include a 1923 Cadillac Phaeton Type Phaeton Phaeton Type 61 custom touring car, license 1V480 something, and the first car, which is going to be the one that is used at the end. No, it's the one that gets the pickaxe in the radiator. That one is a 1916 Locomobile, Locomobile, model 48, license number 1U9212. Knowledgeable car enthusiasts tell us that the shape of the radiator marks this car as no earlier than 1916. And it is the car from which Eleanor Vanderveer and Simona Boniface emerge, and it is the car that has the radiator pierced by Ollie's pickaxe. So that's a 1916 Locomobile model 48. So now you know.
You don't believe me.
Stop it. Now what are we going to do? I don't know. We get locked in. Oh, shut up.
Hey! I'll tell you how to stop that leak. Put some rice in the radiator. Get some from the cook tent.
You go get it and I'll watch this. Now hurry up, too.
And that gag with the rice, of course, had been planned for bacon grabbers and evidently shot, because we have a still of, if you look in the background, there's a grocery store right next to where Stan and Ollie are emerging from the sheriff's office. The window says grocery store, and there's a picture of Charlie Hall with a box of cream of wheat, because their radiator has been damaged. So he, put some cream of wheat in the radiator. They were going to do it there, and they were going to use it again in Perfect Day. And they didn't use it there either. But this is something that evidently had really happened to Fred Carno Jr. and Charlie Hall when they were on some sort of a vaudeville tour. In this period of the studio, there was 1 month when the whole studio took its vacation, rather than people being, gone here, gone there, gone there. Everybody went during 1 month so that everybody would all be back again. And I imagine that's when Carno and Hall took to the road and, did their theatrical tour. But this evidently happened. They were probably in a Model T traversing the hinterlands somewhere in Kansas or somewhere remote where there was, nothing but nothing all around them. And here they are with rice coming out of their radiator. So it was a gag suggested by Charlie Hall from an event that happened in real life.
I think he described it as I was reading it the other day, breakfast cereal.
Okay,
they put breakfast cereal inside, but I don't think it was maybe it was oats or something like that, because he said they were driving along and they thought it was snowing in the desert, and they realized it was coming out of the radiator.
Well, cream of wheat is usually a breakfast cereal.
Oh, okay. So, there we go.
It's smaller granules than what you would have with oatmeal, but I would imagine oatmeal would do the same thing. And now in the Hoose-Gow, they say rice. So, anything like that would need moisture and would absorb it for cooking purposes. Well, any of those would work. I remember
Charlie Hull said he said something like they stopped the car to find out what was happening, opened the bonnet and found the biggest pudding sat on top of the engine. Yeah, because it had all sort of baked on the top.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that I've seen that quote. I would love to see where that, if you have that.
It's yeah, I've got that. Yeah, it was. I think it was. In something like the London Strand newspaper, one of these Charlie Hull's sort of articles, and he describes the whole thing.
Probably when he was when he was there in 1937, 38?
Yeah, I think so.
And couldn't get back home for a while until Edgar Kennedy bailed him out. I'm always sad that he wrote to George Stevens, and George Stevens didn't send him $200 to get back home. For crying out loud, George Stevens was making very healthy salaries. He could have sent Charlie the money. If Charlie was still friends enough with him to write to him and say, I don't have the money to get home, you would think that George Stevens would have gotten the hint. Here it is. But anyway, Edgar Kennedy made a film called Hey, Hey, USA in England. And he got Charlie enough work so that Charlie earned his way back home and didn't have to make gas masks in England for the rest of his days, which is what he had been doing. So, that had to have been frightening. My goodness gracious. Anyway, there's virtually nothing about the whole fight sequence in the script. I like the scene where the little moment, and I don't know if it's certainly not in the script. It may have been unplanned and people just stayed in character, but there's a moment where it's a long shot of the camp and Finlayson, top-hatted Finlayson, as the governor, is inspecting things, and he trips over something. And Tiny Sanford says, "Oh, sorry." So he says, "Have that thing fixed, will you?"
Over here we have the other quarters, which I'll show you. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Governor.
Have that thing fixed, will you?
I will, sir, indeed.
Yeah, that's right. I think that must have been a set. It was because it was really nicely done. They got like a tent wire to trip over and a higher wire to knock his top hat off as he goes over. It's nicely done.
So you think that was coordinated?
I think so. Yeah, I noticed on your commentary you wondered whether it was an accidental thing. Well, it was too nicely done. I think
the way it's played, it doesn't come off as predetermined, which is great.
Like, yeah.
That's what you want. You want it to seem something that just happened off the cuff, you know. So,
yeah, maybe so. Maybe it did. But it's very well done.
Well, good for everybody for staying in character, and
they styled it out lovely.
many times the things that were not planned wound up being the best things in the film. You know,
yes,
that's
right.
The thing about Bob McGowan directing the Our Gang films is he leaves the rough edges in when the kids maybe fluff a line or look at the camera or something. He knows that's the gold. That's the good stuff, is when they're not behaving like actors. They're behaving like real kids. That's the wonderful stuff. And subsequent directors never realized that. Anyway, the script just says, "Go into the mush routine, winding up with the governor, guests, wardens, and convicts getting into the mess." That's it. That's all they say about that whole sequence.
Mush.
So, they had done enough of these grand scale battles, so they pretty much knew how to make it build. You know,
they certainly had done enough of those.
You keep bringing more people into the fray, and of course, it's funny that Stan's politeness vanishes after he's kicked into the pile of mush by Tiny Sanford, and Finlayson hits Ollie, who doesn't care that this is the governor who could conceivably get them pardoned. And he throws mush at Finlayson. And anyway, Eleanor Vanderveer fondly remembered, or not so fondly remembered, this. She got to talk to our friend Bob Satterfield in 1976. And he quotes Eleanor Vanderveer as saying, "That was a lot of fun making this picture, but it took 2 weeks to get the rice out of my hair and my clothes. That rice was really cooked right onto my lovely clothes. Working with Laurel and Hardy was very pleasant. You never knew what they were going to do next. That's what made it so exciting working with them." Now, she was what they called a dress extra. And dress extras would have their own costuming, their own wardrobe that they would bring to the set. They got paid extra because of that, because that way they didn't have to go to wardrobe. They didn't have to have a fitting. It saved a lot of time for the studio. And usually they were smart enough to know to bring at least a couple or three of the same outfit, just in case something happened to the original one. I remember Dorothy Granger told me, she said, "Oh, I would buy my dresses at the May Company, but I always bought 3 of them, whatever the dress was that I had to wear, because you never know if you had to go into the drink or whatever, and you needed a dry one for the next take, you know." So that was something you learned. And in fact, Hal Roach and Harold Lloyd and George Marshall were all roommates together and started as dress extras. And they would pool their money to buy a cowboy outfit, a tuxedo, other things that they knew they were likely to have to wear in a film. They could all fit into the same one, even though I think Harold Lloyd was probably a lot less stocky than Hal Roach. But anyway, they made extra money by providing their own clothing. And evidently Eleanor Vanderveer did, but she wasn't too happy about the rice getting onto her lovely clothes, her actual lovely clothes. So there we go. We have some other people that come into the fray. There's a top-hatted guy, an elderly gent who has a very English accent, who says,
Ladies, see here.
Ladies, see here. That's a fellow by the name. Robert Boulder is his name. He's 70 years old at the time. He's born in 1859 in London. There's a top-hatted guy with a very chic mustache. His name is Jack Chefe, Chefe. And anyway, the melee ensues. This is really, I think this is kind of the last of the grand scale battles, a la the Battle of the Century. Because what have we done? We've done rocks, mud,
Oh,
trousers,
everything.
cars, pies, so and that sort of thing I think was really better suited to silent films than talkies, although this one works pretty well.
Yeah, it does work well, actually. It does work well. Yeah.
The car now also another nice piece of editing is Ollie's reactions when the rice fight is just starting. There are some close-up shots, including one where he turns his eyes and looks at us and goes, "Oh,"
Ooh, yeah.
like, "Oh, we're going to
That's
be
right.
trouble is about to ensue." It's wonderful how he communicates so regularly with the audience, and I think that's a key part of Laurel and Hardy's appeal, is that he
Yes.
brings you
Yeah.
into the movie.
Definitely.
The car at the end that has the whitewash, barrels falling into the back seat, is once again a 1923 Cadillac Type 61 custom touring car. so there you go. That car is already 6 years old, and the script proposed a different wrap-up. Now, originally, Stan and Ollie were to escape during the rice throwing fight, and they come to a fork in the road, and they argue about which path to take. So finally, Stan joins Ollie, and they take a route together, but the boys are met instantly by other escaping convicts and guards escorting them back to camp. Stan and Ollie fall back in and march back to camp as the film fades out. So they did not have the idea about the whitewash, but there you go.
Yes.
So
that sounds very similar to the wrap up in the second 100 years, of course, where they have to march back in line again.
Yeah, and
you got Finlayson and Sanford, of course. This is almost like a sequel to the second 100 years, isn't it?
Yeah, not a remake, but certainly it may well have been inspired by the second 100 years. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So you could have Laurel and Hardy as jailbirds. You have Show That and Liberty and Hoose-Gow as a precursor to Pardon Us. And you have
yeah. One thing I did notice with the food fight at the end, and I might be wrong, but more often than not, Stan usually gets involved later, whereas he's kicked into it first this time. Usually Stan's kind of like standing back, witnessing it all, while everybody else is going, and then he gets sort of dragged.
Certainly, in Your Darn Tootin'.
He's the first one in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your Darn Tootin'. He's just a bystander as all of this stuff has happened. He's sort of in the precipitator of it, but he doesn't get drawn into it until basically the very end of it. So yeah,
and I love how Alexia, how Babe gets drawn into this one. He's thinking, oh, this isn't a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
No, don't do that. Leave it. And then he gets slopped, and you can see like, right, okay. And I think you describe it in the comedy. He's girding his loins. He lifts his kind of belt up.
Well, first he's in close up. It's just a tight close up, and he gets hit with the rice, which entirely covers his face. And he turns to us and then very daintily, symmetrically wipes his eyes and flicks the rice off and a little bit more and does a very dainty finger gestures, getting the nasty gooey rice off of his fingers. And then he looks and you can tell it's out of the shot, but you can tell he's hoisting his trousers up like, all right, literally girding his loins. That's what that means. And and off into the fray he goes. So
yes,
it's sort of like Bugs
Bunny.
I
love those little moments where they sort of they nod at each other. Right, it starts here.
Yeah.
This is it. So you either hikes his trousers, sleeves up, or just a nod to each other. Love it.
The Bugs Bunny equivalent is, of course, you realize this means war.
Yes,
which he will say when that moment comes. The definitive moment is I'm done being Mr. Nice Guy. So there is our blow-by-blow description of the Hoose-Gow, and
yes, I think we've covered that very, very well this time. We've been pretty direct, haven't we? We've got a straight line through.
I had the benefit of the notes, so I tried to be a little more linear than my usual scattershot approach.
The only thing I've got to add, other than that, I've had to scout around the sort of newspapers of the day and of the period. The only one I've got is for the 11th of September, which is the day after filming ended. Stan and Babe were on the radio.
Oh, okay.
So the piece was from the Pasadena Post, And it says, if Laurel and Hardy are half as funny over the air as they are on the screen, then the movie club program from KHJ at 8 o'clock tonight, with this inimitable pair acting as masters of ceremonies, is easily the brightest spot on tonight's list of features. Clustered about this are other rays of light, namely Lily Demeter, French film actress, and orchestra brought from the East by KHJ at 6 o'clock. Guy Fraser Harrison's concert orchestra over KFI at 6:30. Blah, 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 and it goes on and on.
Well, KHJ was still a big rock and roll station in the 60s and 70s. 93 KHJ, Los Angeles. I remember those jingles. That was the top 40 rock and roll station on AM radio when I was a kid. That was it. And KFI is still, did you mention KFI? KFI is still KFI. You can tell the radio stations that have only 3 letters in their call letters are the older ones.
Okay.
Because as stations began to proliferate, the Federal Radio Commission, later the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, realized, we're going to run out of 3-letter combinations. We better make them 4. In New York, you have WOR and you had WJZ, and Chicago, they had WGN, which stood for World's Greatest Newspaper because it was owned by the Chicago Tribune. And out here, we still have KNX, and I think KHJ is still KHJ. We still have KFI. These are among the oldest stations that we've had. Although, oddly enough, there was, going back to 1925, there was KFWB, which supposedly stood for Keep Filming Warner Brothers, because it was on the Warner Brothers lot.
Right. That's great. Yeah, this mentions KHJ at 6 o'clock, Guy Fraser Harrison Concert Orchestra KFI, the Weekly Musical Voyage over KNX at 8:30, and 3 outstanding favourites with Southern California fans at 9 o'clock. Arthur Lang, baritone from WFI, the 3 Boswell sisters over KNX.
And the Boswell sisters?
Yes,
really?
The Boswell sisters. Oh, yes. And the Jazz Rhapsodists, Ben Light and Mark Cook from KEJK.
Ben Light was a very good piano player and later made some rather salacious party records in the 1940s. But
did he?
I have an album, a good album of instrumental piano pieces that he did. And the Boswell sisters, of course, were a fantastic close harmony group. I mean, really advanced for their time. Very like modern jazz in the early 30s, and a big influence on the Andrews Sisters and every other sister act that ever followed them. So we have recordings of them. They did a syndicated show for the Continental Baking Company in early 1930. So those are the earliest recordings that we have of them, because that was pressed on records and sent out to subscribing stations around the country. But 1929, they're doing radio in Southern California. That's good to know.
There you go.
Connie, Martha, and Helvetia, the Boswell sisters. And Connie later went out as a single, so you'll find records by Connie Boswell as well as with her 2 sisters. But they're amazing. You go find them on YouTube and listen to some of their records of the early 30s. They're spectacular.
Oh, I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'll do that next. There we go. Wonderful.
Everybody Loves My Baby is a good one by the Boswell sisters.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll make a note of that.
Amazing.
I'll make it.
We'll
link those up.
I'm surprised that they're not on KFVD, though, because that was the station that was at the Roach Studios. And among the weekly offerings was Hal Roach Comedy Gossip. Boy, we wish we had recordings of that.
Oh, can you imagine? Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Do you know what Harry Bernard was doing the other day? And all the dirt about all the supporting players at the Hal Roach Studios. Oh, boy.
Oh, we'd love it. Yeah, we'd love it. If only. There's no chance they're surviving, I guess.
I don't imagine that there were recordings made, although I have a friend named John Tefteller who was a radio archivist, and he said, they recorded everything for legal purposes. So I don't know, but we don't know where those recordings would be hiding. But probably, if there were any, they would have been on metal transcriptions, and they would have gone to make airplanes during World War II. That's where an awful lot of radio transcriptions made, because nobody could foresee that anybody would want to hear these things again. So there's a lot of American radio that survives from 1937, 38 and later, but not too much from earlier, because that was deemed to be the obsolete stuff. So we have bits here and there from the early 30s or before, much of which is because they were transcribed shows, once again, that were not aired live, but sold to subscriber stations. So
Right. Okay.
we have what we have.
Well, from what we know of Hal Roach, he wouldn't have been hanging on to anything old like that, would he? He'd have been getting rid of it all. I would have
No,
thought.
and Uncle Sam made sure that they got rid of a lot of stuff that he might have wanted to hang on to.
Yeah.
Roy
yeah,
Seawright
yeah,
sadly
yeah.
told me about that.
Oh dear. It's a crime. Randy, thank you so much. That was great. I really enjoyed that.
All right.
Excellent. And I hope it inspires our listeners to go back and revisit the Hoose-Gow again.
Good.
Now we know what the Hoose-Gow means, because I've never known what that means. So even that on its own was worth listening to this episode for. So that's great. Love it. Thank you so much, Randy. And hopefully we'll see you again in the not too distant future for another deep dive into one of these wonderful, wonderful classic films.
Anytime you want me, I'm here.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank
All the
you.
best now. You take care.
Okay.
So that's it. The show is over, and it's time to pack away the grease paint. I do hope you enjoyed today's exploration of the Hoose-Gow, and maybe we've inspired you to give it another screening. If you enjoy these podcasts, please help to keep it going by showing your support by becoming a patron of the podcast at patreon.com. Links in the show notes as usual. And please don't forget to tell everyone you know about our Laurel and Hardy Silence book. We are getting closer and closer to ordering time, so we don't want anybody to miss the boat. Again, links to the book's webpage are in the show notes. So all that remains is to thank today's amazing returning guest, Randy Skretvedt. Thank you to the Bohunks Orchestra and Basta Music. And last but never least, thank you for joining me and listening once again. And until next time, it's goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
And a very goodbye from me. Goodbye.
Thank you.